Hi everyone. Um, it's not actually my first YouTube video, but it's going to be my first one that I can actually publish, hopefully, because it's not incredibly bad. We can hope. Anyway, for my first kind of ASMR, or softly spoken at least, video, I just want to go through a handful of my books that I like. I mean, I'm really quite into reading, so I have millions of favourite ones, but I'll just go through a few just because this is my first video, so it'll give me a chance to practice something. So here we go. And the first one that I've got, if you can see there, that's it. Lovecraft. He's a horror writer from New England. He wrote in the 1920s and 1930s, and he's probably my most favourite writer, I reckon. Although it's a close call between a number of other people. But he wrote loads. He's probably most famous for The Call of Cthulhu and the books from Cthulhu mythos. So he's my first on the list. Next up, I've got a book by a guy, a Scottish writer called Adam Neville, and he's a fairly Neville. That's Apartment 16. That's a brilliant horror story, actually. Apartment 16, really innovative story. And he's quite a modern writer, and he's written a lot of books recently, and I've never been disappointed by one of his stories. He's a very imaginative guy, with one or two exceptions. He hasn't nicked any ideas, or hasn't nicked many ideas of other people, so he's quite an original writer. Okay, this one here, it doesn't have a title on the cover. It's got some great pictures on it. This is actually a journal. It's called The Anomalist. See if you can see the border there. Oh, Strange Attractor. It's not The Anomalist. It's Strange Attractor. Strange Attractor is it's a compilation of kind of essays and studies of weird stuff, just things that people do that are not often recorded, and quite detailed studies into them. So you have stuff like folklore, and you might get a bit of ufology, or you might get stuff on ghosts, but there's also some really odd things. In one of the recent ones I read, there was a treatise on 1950s treatise on how to cut women's hair to make it look like a ship sailing on an ocean, and that kind of very weird stuff. But I like it because it's just so odd and unusual. And that's number 4, but there's a whole bunch of them. I dragged this one up as well. This is one I haven't read for a long time. You can see that. Voice of the Fire by Alan Moore. Voice of the Fire is a collection of short stories that are all set in the same place, but not in the same time. So they go on throughout the story of a particular place, and people are connected by the past. And it starts off in prehistory, and it goes through to the 1920s. It goes through the Roman era and all sorts of other periods of time. So it's quite weird. It's a bit supernatural, but it's mainly kind of grounded in kind of history. But it's interesting stuff. And this one I got is this is a really old one from the 1970s. This is Rebecca's World by the late Terry Nation. It's a children's book, but it's probably one of my favourite books in the world ever. And it's a fantasy story about a little girl that goes to another world, looks through a telescope, and ends up on a bit like Alice in Wonderland, Alice through the Looking Glass kind of thing. And it's as eccentric as that as well. But it's just such a fantastic story, and this particular version of it is probably now going for about $250, I think, for this particular imprint on Amazon. There are other versions of it as well, more recent versions of it as well, like this one. But even they're talking about £30, and it's quite expensive to get hold of now, and it's really overdue a reissue, because a whole new generation of kids should get to read that. And finally, here is my most recent read, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which is a fantasy story again, but with loads of really old strange photographs in it from bygone times, which has inspired the author to actually write the story. So anyway, that's my first attempt at a video. I don't know how softly spoken that was. Maybe I picked up speed and picked up volume as I've gone on. But I'll have a go again shortly. So give me your feedback. Thanks very much. Bye for now.